1. Iran's nuclear talks, Europe's role at risk amid UN sanctions. 2. Iran's retaliation threat, snapback sanctions explained. 3. Europe's nuclear deadline for Iran, what happens next? 1. Iran's nuclear talks, Europe's role at risk amid UN sanctions. In a striking warning, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has asserted that the reimposition of United Nations sanctions would effectively mark the conclusion of Europe's involvement in the Iranian nuclear negotiations. This statement underscores the delicate balance of international diplomacy surrounding Iran's nuclear program. Araghchi elaborated that Tehran is currently assessing the specifics regarding a potential revival of nuclear discussions with the United States. He stated, "We are considering various factors such as the timing, location, format, and necessary assurances from Iran for any forthcoming negotiations." Importantly, Araghchi clarified that any discussions with major global powers would be strictly limited to Iran's nuclear activities, explicitly excluding its military capabilities. He emphasized, if negotiations take place, they will solely focus on nuclear matters and building trust in Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. No other topics will be on the table. The backdrop to these developments includes a recent escalation in hostilities, where Israel conducted extensive strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, military leaders, and even residential areas, resulting in significant casualties. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu justified the attacks, claiming they were necessary to mitigate what he described as an existential threat to Israel. Conversely, Iran condemned these actions as unprovoked aggression, violating international law. In the chaotic aftermath, Iran retaliated, leading to a series of missile exchanges between the two nations. The United States intervened on Israel's behalf, deploying advanced weaponry to target fortified Iranian sites, including the Fordow facility. The conflict culminated in a dramatic response from Iran, which targeted a key U.S. base in Qatar, prompting President Trump to announce a ceasefire shortly thereafter. Following this conflict, Iran declared a suspension of its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, citing a profound mistrust of the organization. Araghchi noted that Iran's collaboration with the IAEA would evolve into a new format after President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a law that halts Iran's cooperation with the agency. He stated, "Our engagement with the agency has not ceased, it will simply take on a different shape." The new legislation mandates that any future inspections of Iran's nuclear sites by the IAEA must receive approval from the Supreme National Council. Furthermore, Pezeshkian warned that the IAEA must abandon its perceived double standards if it wishes to restore cooperation with Tehran. He concluded with a stern reminder that any further aggression against Iran would provoke a more decisive and regrettable response. 2. Iran's retaliation threat, snapback sanctions explained. Iran has issued a stark warning about potential repercussions if the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, considers implementing what are known as snapback sanctions. This statement by Iranian officials comes as the clock ticks down towards decisive action aimed at curbing Tehran's nuclear development programs. During a press conference, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, Ismail Baghaei, asserted, "The threat to utilize the snapback mechanism is devoid of both legal and political foundation, and we will respond in a manner that is suitable and proportional to the Islamic Republic of Iran." It's notable that Baghaei did not specify what form this retaliation might take, but his comments are particularly pointed amidst ongoing discussions among security analysts who emphasize that the timeline for enforcing such sanctions is rapidly approaching the October 18 deadline established by the 2015 nuclear agreement. His remarks came on a significant date, marking a decade since the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, was introduced, which aimed at curtailing Iran's pursuit of nuclear capabilities. Critics, however, argue that the deal has proven inadequate in sufficiently restraining Iran's nuclear ambitions. As per the agreement's provisions, any nation that is part of the JCPOA can, on its own, activate snapback sanctions if Iran is determined to have breached the terms of the deal. Although the US is a signatory, along with the United Kingdom, France, Germany, China, and Russia, it lost the ability to enact this mechanism when it withdrew from the agreement in 2018 during President Donald Trump's administration. While the US has persistently pressured for the reimposition of sanctions, creating a scenario where all 15 UNSC members, including Russia, would be obligated to restore sanctions on Iran. No actions have yet been taken by either the UNSC or the JCPOA members to initiate this enforcement. Behnam Ben Tailblue, a senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, commented, "One of the few advantages of the JCPOA is that it essentially allows any permanent member of the Council to activate Snapback, but the reason it hasn't happened is quite clear: it involves significant risk." Ben Tailblue also warned that if Snapback sanctions are imposed, Iran's most probable reaction could be its exit from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT. This treaty, signed by over 190 nations, aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote peaceful uses of nuclear energy among its signatories. The United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency oversees adherence to the JCPOA, but Iran has already suspended its cooperation following a series of US and Israeli strikes aimed at its nuclear facilities last month. Understanding that Iran might leave the NPT, we must have confidence in the effectiveness of military deterrence against Iran, not to mention the credibility of military options available from the US, Israel, and other global players, said Ben Tailblue. Meanwhile, he highlighted that the absence of a coherent strategy for post-sanction scenarios remains problematic. Although the US believes that Iranian nuclear development has been delayed by as much as 2 years, experts assert that Tehran's ambitions have not been fully mitigated. Furthermore, Iran's affiliations with terrorist networks and hostile nations keep it firmly positioned as a critical security issue. Trump has reiterated his commitment to negotiations regarding Iran's nuclear strategy, raising questions about how much longer he will allow these discussions to continue, particularly as the possibility grows for European countries such as the UK, France, or Germany to act proactively in reactivating snapback sanctions before the critical October deadline and ahead of a shift in leadership within the UNSC. Implementing snapback measures is anticipated to take about 6 weeks to complete. Reports have surfaced suggesting that German Chancellor Friedrich Merz might initiate these snapback actions as soon as Tuesday, alongside US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee expressing support for this move. Nevertheless, Fox News Digital was unable to verify these reports independently. The German Foreign Ministry has rejected the claims made regarding Merz's actions. So, what do you think? Is Iran's threat of retaliation a bluster, or does it signal a more serious potential conflict? Given the complexities involved, where do you see the international community heading from here? 3. Europe's nuclear deadline for Iran. What happens next? A ticking clock is now central to Europe's stance on Iran's nuclear ambitions. The European Union has set a clear deadline for Iran: show progress in curbing its nuclear program by August 29 or face the reinstatement of stringent UN sanctions. This ultimatum underscores the urgency of the situation as EU officials strive to reassert their influence in a matter that has seen significant involvement from other global players, especially following recent tensions. During a meeting with his counterparts from other European nations, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël articulated the bloc's position, stating, France and its allies are justified in reinstating global embargoes on arms, banking, and nuclear equipment that were initially lifted a decade ago. If Iran does not exhibit a strong, concrete, and verifiable commitment toward nuclear restraint, we will proceed to reintroduce these sanctions by the end of August, if not sooner. It's important to note that Europe has largely been sidelined in the Iranian nuclear discourse, especially after former US President Donald Trump escalated tensions by ordering drone strikes on Iranian nuclear sites just last month. Many see the EU's recent move as an effort to reclaim a central role in negotiations around Iran's nuclear strategy. The deadline at the end of August signals the initiation of a process that could enable sanctions to be fully reinstated by October 15. This timeline gives European signatories of the 2015 nuclear agreement, namely the UK, France, and Germany, continued leverage in their discussions with Iran. One of their primary objectives is to facilitate the return of UN nuclear inspectors to Iran. This is crucial to ensure that Iran does not attempt to modify its nuclear agenda following the damage caused by US airstrikes in June. Interestingly, the framework of the 2015 nuclear deal permits the snapback of sanctions without allowing veto power from the other signatories, such as China and Russia. However, the European nations have the option to delay these reinstatement measures if they feel further dialogue is necessary. Additionally, the United States, having departed from the nuclear agreement in 2018, also lacks the authority to obstruct moves made by the UK or France regarding the snapback of sanctions. If these sanctions are reimposed, they would activate under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, mandating the reinstatement of 6 previous UN resolutions which could compel Iran to halt all uranium enrichment and reprocessing activities. This includes research and development sectors. Furthermore, one such resolution would obligate all UN member states to prevent the transfer of materials or technologies that could be used for nuclear or missile development. Experts on Iranian sanctions suggest that reinstated resolutions might not necessarily stop all Iranian oil exports, disrupt access to international financial networks, or entirely halt trade communications. However, they do stipulate that all nations and financial institutions must withhold financial support, new agreements, or preferential loans to Tehran unless for humanitarian or developmental purposes. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, has voiced strong opposition to the notion of reimposing sanctions, stating that such an action would signify the end of Europe's role in matters concerning Iran's nuclear strategy. He warns, this could become a low point in the historical dialogue between Iran and these 3 European nations, one that may be irreparable. Araghchi further criticized the European perspective on the snapback mechanism, asserting, they mistakenly believe that the power of the snapback gives them control over the Iranian issue. In reality, this misunderstanding complicates the pathway to resolving the nuclear dilemma even further. ***, what are your thoughts? Do you believe that reinstating these sanctions could lead to a more effective resolution in the Iranian nuclear crisis, or do you think it will only damage diplomatic relations further? Let's discuss your views in the comments below. ***.